Hello darklings, lightlings, and everyone in between. Welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to sort of talk about my alchemical journey on the left-hand path so far, and what type of spiritual work I had to do to really prepare myself to work with demons and work and become one with the darkness. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that today, and hopefully this can help somebody else that is thinking about working on the dark side. Okay, so with Azazel, he has made it quite apparent to me that I am going to be learning a lot about alchemy, both exoteric and esoteric and spiritually. And to kind of break the ice with that, I wanted to talk about some transformations that have already took place and things I feel like we have to go through psychologically and spiritually and emotionally to get ready to work with these type of beings. Now, this is in my experience, this really applies to me, but I'm hoping that by talking about it a little bit, you guys can identify these aspects in yourself and watch yourself change and grow as well. Of course, it'll be different for all of us. Before I get into it, if you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe for me, I would really appreciate that. And hit your bell too. A lot of people are saying they're not getting my notifications for the lives, and I got some pretty interesting stuff coming up. So if you're interested, just click on it for me. Thank you. So alchemy and our journey into the abyss. And when I say abyss, what I mean by that is the abyss of our psyche, the darkest aspect of ourself. Death of the self to be reborn into a path of mysteriousness in the unknown is part of a lot of our journeys, I feel, especially in the occult community. And in this video, I'm talking about descending into the darkest parts of your shadow or darkest corners of your mind. The steps that we go through alchemically to face our shadows, yes, but more importantly, to strip away our old identity as we grasp to hold on to that old identity. When we let go, finally being reborn into our new identity, one that is more pleasing to the self, kind of that know thyself aspect, to prepare for ascension. So one of the first things I noticed changing about me spiritually and mentally while I was becoming quite interested in the left-hand path was and as I began kind of working with the first couple of demons, I noticed the first step to this was like one of the 7 alchemical steps, calcination. This is occurring like it's a natural process that happens to all of us as we go through our experiences or our journeys and our paths. Now, this process is the humbling process, and it helps you be able to determine and get through obstacles in your life. Resistance with the self occurs during this, and finally, a surrender into the unknown, as we acknowledge the need for change. So what this is that I'm talking about, kind of, if you are aware of the hero's alchemical journey, a lot of heroes and stories, things like that. They kind of get a call to action, right? Well, this would be your call to action spiritually, like on your path. And it can show up in many different ways. For me, it was a full manifestation of Beelzebub, but before he had manifested to me, I had already been researching and looking into these entities and into that path. I just was battling with myself if I wanted to go there or not. So after this call to action, and then like I said, Beelzebub manifesting right in front of me, now we are kind of becoming more willing to descend into our dark parts. Even if we don't really know why or where it's taking us, we try to let go of those fears or those restraints holding us back. And that fear can be crippling at times. In my opinion, this is where a lot of practitioners will battle the process a bit longer before exploring the darker aspects of the self or psyche or in their path, because of the fear or the resistance within themselves. Others will want to go deeper, kind of like myself, in search of their spirituality or to become aware so they can begin their next step in their transformation in their spiritual path. So when you determine all of this and you kind of decide, okay, yeah, I'm going to give it a go, you're in a way symbolically dying. And you may have trouble with which direction you or your path is heading spiritually. You see no guidance during this stage, and you are asking questions, but really no answers as of yet is happening. Almost as if you were in a spiritual void. Now, the spiritual void I wanted to bring up because I've been there quite a few times on my path, and you can identify it in others too, that kind of describe it being similar to my experiences. Probably every few years I would go through it, but this year I went through it a couple times. That's where I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a void. I knew where my path was going, I knew where I wanted it to go, but now something changed, something's different. It's not heading in that direction anymore, and I'm not sure where it's going to go until I receive that aha moment. For this month alone, it was Azazel for me, right? I was kind of in that spiritual void, not really sure where I was going to take my path next, even though I had so many different doors open, so many different interests. I had no direction. And then I received that little whisper, and I said, that's where I need to go. Okay. So the next step after this kind of happens to you, that death of the old self and that void, and you're trying to discover and come into that like Phoenix rebirth stage. First, you have to go through what I call the labyrinth. Now, this is the labyrinth of the mind before you go deeper into the abyss of your psyche. Things here in this stage or part of your path can be disillusioned and confusing about our conscious identity as we begin to merge with our unconscious psyche. In this process, we are working through the negative and we're bringing it to the surface simultaneously. The guilt, desire, shame, anger, greed, lust, abuse, or trauma may show up in people archetypes, spirit archetypes, or surrounding archetypes. Some will need to be sacrificed or let go of that which no longer serves you before you can move on in this labyrinth, right? And what I mean by that is, how many people are in your life that really cause more grief than good, but you really don't want to let go of them, however you know you'd be better off. that's the sacrifice here, to continue into the labyrinth. And it's also a lot to do with shadows, shadow work, shadow self, and our desires. But all of this plays a very big role in our spiritual alchemy. So the unconscious can emerge for us in many different forms. Imagine like dreams, like things you dream about, kind of merging into your reality world, your material world. Things just feel jumbled and not making sense, kind of floaty headspace. I've been there a few times as well. Understanding and experience this in the conscious state, some can argue, would be considered like a mental illness. However, there are differences, you know, or you face it and you become negative, or you can move on to the next stage. So these are 3 different things that can happen during this point. And I think this is where a lot of the other practitioners will warn you while messing with black magic or these entities that you could really kind of lose it, and you can. There's a few times I've questioned my reality, but this is a bit different. This is a transformation within yourself and how far you're going to get by exploring your own shadow or your own labyrinth. So you're either could show signs of mental illness, or you could see the dark parts, not like it, and turn into a negative person yourself, or you move on. You disassociate. And then things will begin to change. You begin to accept and open up to the understanding that it is imperative for you to accept what cannot be undone or changed. And that, in a way, is the atonement process of the self. You're getting closer to integrating the shadow with yourself. Once full integration happens, we accept the darkness, we let it in, we embrace it. If we reject our dark side, we are imbalanced and believe that we are separate from what we project onto others, or that of which we dislike about them, or we could like too much. So you ever just meet someone and you instantly dislike them? Well, unless they really did something in your face to make you dislike them, perhaps explore why that might be. What is it in them or in you that you can see links to? After the atonement stage, we're relieved, we're closer to our shadow, therefore able to further descend into our own abyss. Now, integration with the shadow is a huge illusion, right? An illusion that we all have and we all share. We all believe we are separate from our shadow at one point until we do this work. And it will transform you. So in this point, we will admit who and what we are, and you realize things that you did not before about yourself. As we descend further into the abyss, or our abyss, into our darkness, I tried to put abyss and darkness into one word. Anyway, you have acknowledged basically what you need to let go and what doesn't serve you. You integrated closer to acceptance of the self. So it is time for more death and rebirth. You know, like those, we look at it as those tower moments. However, the death and rebirth stage, I have to say, probably happens quite frequently for me anyway, especially while working with demons. I would dare to say that with every demon I worked with, I went through a death and rebirth with every path working and was forever changed from it. But with this death and rebirth, we become a bit more willing, excited even, to explore what is beyond or what is further in our psyche or unconscious aspects of ourselves. We may discover some things we rejected are exciting to us, so we now, in a state of acceptance and willingness, we are ready to explore, we're ready to begin. We're now more aware. It reminds me of when I first began my path on the left-hand path. Out of fear or resentment for evil, I remember just resenting it completely. And I was one of them witches that would say, you know, oh, I'll never work with demons, no. And passionate about it at the time, but never say never, because the universe will give you that experience. However, after going through these stages, as my attention started focusing more on darker entities or darker workings or Luciferianism, I started kind of facing my own demons. And then I really analyzed what it was about them I detested. And what it was is, I realized they're just archetypes of sometimes mankind's most primitive nature or actions. You know, I know we're all connected and we can get deeper and further with that, but I'm going to leave you with that thought and kind of analyze that within yourself. I started viewing them as they are me and I am them. I know they're completely different, higher dimensional, and they think differently, they act differently. I mean, they're ancient. However, there are a lot of things about what Jewish and or Christianity, you know, what they would consider a demon. There's a lot in them that is in us by nature. So after further working on it, they began to not seem evil at all anymore to me. So you are now making this choice to look at it, to go deeper within. You're now consciously making the choice, rather it happening, naturally. Then there comes that time after the universe kind of puts you in that spot where you have to make that conscious choice. And this is usually the time or the stage that I did. Next, we are at that moment in time when we identify truly what parts of ourself we kill or let go of, like shame, guilt, or anger and desires. We are no longer going by societal standards or what we are told to do from programming, from outside sources, right? These are things that we're choosing for ourselves, what is right to us. This stage can cause feelings of losing yourself or destructing your old self or identity because of the negative emotions associated with it, out of fear of judgment, backlash, resentment from our peers or society or religious groups. But this is where you really have to soul search and define your own ethics and morality. Be honest with yourself. Who do you want to be? We choose to love ourselves and we reject the negative burdens we place on our backs. And that will lead us into separation, is what I call this step. When you process the shadow self, this will allow you to break the restraints to your true nature and to your higher self in the end. Some of you will be reintegrating things into your shadow or rejecting as you dissect this part of you, this separation stage, while you're going through this symbolic death. So some people can get stuck here too, constantly reliving the death and rebirth, and probably some of my issue as well in the past. Sorry, my nose itches. Because as we're working through this stuff, we're still trying to break it down and process it in our psyches, right? So we could be unconsciously reintegrating things back into our shadow as we're trying to symbolically kill the old identity or work this out. But once you have done this and moved on, it is so rewarding and beneficial, and you come out in the rebirthed stage. You're more sure of yourself. You're more sure of your ethics, your own moral code, your own thoughts and beliefs. And you're ready to continue. So Belial really helped me through this step, as well as Beelzebub, before him forcing me to see what I refused to look at within myself. I have mentioned before that demons will hijack shadow work for you. And I really feel like that's the reason why, is because if we go through this process in your path, then you'll be more ready to work with darkness and become one with it. You'll be more prepared in your psyche to learn from these entities. And I think they get a bad reputation because of this part. However, it is very necessary once you understand how they operate and how they work and how deep it goes and all the possibilities. Because they're going to lay some heavy shit on you, and you're going to need to prepare yourself for that, right? If you can't accept your own darkness, how are you going to become one with it in other entities? So this is alchemy of the mind and the spirit to prepare for your descent before you ascend. I am a firm believer. Now, you may have a difference in opinion with this, and that's okay. However, I will stick by my thoughts that one has to descend before they ascend. And we see that very much in a lot of symbols in our waking reality, in dreams, in movies, books, TV. We see that a lot. People usually always, or it gets worse before it gets bad. I usually say we have to descend into that darkness before we can hope to achieve ascension. It works for me, personally. I think about going to the deepest part of the abyss in my own psyche, in my own spirit. And with each demon, I feel like I'm elevating closer and closer to that light, because I feel like from the bottom, my inner flame will ignite, and it will be fed more and more as I reach the higher stages, right? As I try to achieve or chase this ascension. And this will come with many different aspects of balance. We're going to need to unify our feminine and masculine energies, or balance them. And you can do this within yourselves, not saying you have to have a partner, but I mean, it's always wonderful when we do have that unity as well. And we need to unify our anima and our animus within ourselves, our own unconscious thoughts on the opposite sex. And I'm going to be doing a whole video on that and Carl Jung's work shortly here, because this is going to be part of the whole alchemy thing. But yeah, so with that being said, I don't want to get too deep into that right now. But we're going to walk through our own darkness, then descend into pure darkness and illuminate ourselves from within. Now, to achieve this, we are experiencing an awakening to our shadow. To integrate it, then let go of the parts of the lower self, and then merging as we grow. While working with demons, I realized I've went through this process a few times. They very much are the archetypes in my path to self-empowerment and to my ascension. We change, we have a better understanding of the self, better understanding of the shadow in our path, and we realize we are one with all of it. What we are now becoming is starting to become clear to us. We stop projecting, we stop judging, we stop pointing fingers at everybody. Compassion and love will show you the illusions you had of yourself. What I mean by that is compassion and love for the self will start breaking down these illusions. Because I feel like the less we love ourselves, the more illusions we're going to try to integrate so that we may feel better about ourselves, right? That's that old identity that we're tearing down here. So becoming one with the shadow and taking it further, at this point in my path, I created a ritual for symbolizing out with the old and in with the new. Deprogramming is important here, and applying Luciferian or left-hand path ideology or philosophies into my path really helped. I applied the Luciferian 11 points of power, and I mean, it worked wonders for me. So maybe it can for you. Distillation is the agitation of psychic forces, so no negative forms of identity or the shadow are controlling you any longer and are no longer driving the mind. So now you are in full control of your spiritual vehicle or your material vehicle, your body, right? You are driving it now. You no longer have the shadow driving it. You no longer have the unconscious driving it or manifesting in these ways. Now you are in control. We know we must stop fighting ourselves and embrace the self. So we gave up the illusion that the shadow is separate from us. We give up the illusion that demons are evil. We give up negative perspective from our own projections. We are ready to change our direction now that we can be more aware of our own projections and our own unconscious thoughts. We seek truth. We seek our truth on our path. And we're prepared to walk through the darkness, approaching it differently in our psyche now. We get better, less fearful, moving on, using what we learned from all this. I now know this, and now know this is how working with demons is for the practitioner, and creating that alchemical transformation from within the practitioner. So those are my thoughts on very real steps that I kind of went through, very real processes I went through that I feel was very necessary on my path to prepare me to work with these entities. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you. What are your thoughts on this? And are you already working with these type of entities, or are you thinking about it? And let me know if you can identify these aspects of yourself while you're going through the processes on your path and your spiritual alchemical journey. Well, much love, guys, and here soon we're going to be going through the 7 steps of alchemy and how we can apply them more spiritually and transmute the self, and how Azazel is teaching me all this. Well, much love, and until next time.